UFC Vegas 81 Yusuff versus Barboza takes place this weekend, and I'm going to be giving you my full card predictions and betting breakdown. Starting out with the prelims, we're taking Emily DeCote over Ashley Yoder. Ashley Yoder is 8-8 in her career. She's lost 4 of her last 5, coming off of 2 losses to Angela Hill and Jin Yu Frey. Jin Yu Frey is not a good fighter. This was 2 years ago, so now she's coming off a long layoff. Emily DeCote recently lost to Lupita Godinez. Lupita Godinez is a serviceable fighter, and she also lost Angela Hill, who is ranked in this division. This is at women's flyweight. I think it's as simple as Ashley Yoder is ass. Emily DeCote is not great. We're taking her by decision. Her last win, the last win in between these two females in general, is 1 year and 2 months ago over Jessica Penne for Emily DeCote. We're taking DeCote here. Not very excited for this one at all. We're taking DeCote by decision, as I said. Moving on up the card, we have Chris Gutierrez versus Alateng Lee. In this matchup, I'm going to be going with Chris Gutierrez, but these lines are absolutely crazy. Currently, Chris Gutierrez is minus 400, and I don't understand this at all. I'm very, very scared for my pick in Chris Gutierrez. Alateng Lee is a guy that I looked at picking. He's dangerous in the first round. He starts out pretty well. I could see him KOing Chris Gutierrez in the first couple of rounds or even getting this by decision. Chris Gutierrez hasn't beat anyone but the withered body of Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was on life support. He was literally decaying by the time he was in that octagon. That's his best win. Outside of that, he beat Baccarel Dana, who I have been unimpressed with time and time again. Baccarel Dana has horrible fight IQ, and his other wins are against Felipe Colares and Andre Ewell, who are not very fantastic fighters either. Now, he did have a close decision loss to Pedro Munoz, and Pedro Munoz is legit. He was the favorite in that matchup, but he got fraud checked a little bit. What we do know is Chris Gutierrez, he should be in that rankings, the lower level rankings, if not barely outside of it. He's a skilled fighter, but he hasn't really beaten anyone of the caliber of Alateng Lee yet, outside of Frankie Edgar, and however you want to view Frankie Edgar at that time on his retirement fight, that's up to you. Alateng Lee is coming off a win over Chad Anheliger, who is okay, nothing too special, but as I said, he is a very fast starter. He's 31 years old, fighting out of China, and Chris Gutierrez is fighting out of Inglewood, Colorado, by the way. Alateng Lee is 31, Chris Gutierrez is 32, so they're very similar in age. Like I said, Alateng Lee should not be that big of an underdog. I would sprinkle maybe a little bit of a KO, a little bit of a decision, but as I said, since Chris Gutierrez is the pick, I will not be doing that myself. This is actually a pretty high-level fight. I don't know why this is this low on the card. But anyways, official pick, Chris Gutierrez at range. He's just going to outpoint Alateng Lee. I think he's going to lose the first round, but he's going to get in his flow state. He's going to stay at range, and he's going to, work the kicks. Work the kicks, get the boxing going, just slowly outpoint Alateng Lee. It's going to be a little bit closer than people will expect. I'm not going to be super confident in Chris Gutierrez. And as you're watching this fight, I bet that you're not going to be that confident all the way through. I could be wrong, though. This could be a 30-27 decision. Moving on up the card, we have Irina Alexieva versus Melissa Dixon. In this matchup, I'm going to be taking Irina Alexieva. I think she could actually get this done by submission or a decision. She has pretty heavy hands, and she's very aggressive on the feet and has nice submissions. She's coming off a win in her UFC debut against Stephanie Egger, who isn't a joke on the ground. So that's a very impressive win. And then you go to Melissa Dixon, who is 5-0 in her UFC career. This is her UFC debut, and she's coming off a win against Daria Zelenzinkov. In this fight, Daria was piecing her up, putting her in the blender, cooking her up, and then eventually she got the fight to the ground and got the TKO. But I'm not very confident in her in this matchup. She is the favorite, which I'm a little bit surprised by, but Irina is a good pick here. I liked it. She's got finishing potential on the feet, on the ground, and she could also just outpoint her. I think Melissa Dixon, if she tries to take it down on the ground, she's going to see Irina Alexieva piece together some submissions, threaten all these submissions, and she's going to want to go back up on the feet, where Irina's going to eventually piece her up and have success and win this by a 29-28 decision. Melissa Dixon will get around by top control. And yeah, that's all I got for this one. Irina Alexieva by decision. Solid underdog. Moving on up the card, we have Terrence McKinney versus Brendan Murat. Terrence McKinney is going to KO this guy in the first round, and if it's not a KO in the first round, the only other way this could go is a submission in round 1. Brendan Murat has won 4 out of his last 5. He was just signed on short notice because Terrence McKinney was supposed to be taking on Chris Duncan, which supposedly is still on just for a later date. And Brendan Murat has beaten no one. His last fight was 1 month ago against Lionel Young, and I'm looking at his record right now. The guy's 11-20. And then he did lose to a guy 4 years ago, so never mind. This doesn't really matter, but that was 5-1. He has fought twice this year, and then before that, it was 3 years ago. So he's being more active, but he hasn't beaten anyone on the regional scene. I don't know how this guy is even in the UFC. If Terrence McKinney doesn't obliterate this guy in the first round, that just proves to you that he is a fraud. Moving on up the card, we have Tainara Lisboa versus Ravina Oliveira. In this matchup, I'm going to be taking Tainara Lisboa. However, a minus 370 tag is crazy for anyone that only has one fight in the UFC, and it was over Jessica Rose Clark. And if you know Jessica Rose Clark, she is very finishable. A lot of people have gotten her out in the first round. She got it done in the third round, but she does have good cardio. Her standing looks somewhat okay, and she's got good BJJ. Now, Ravina Oliveira, she's 7-1. This is her UFC debut. She's 26 years old, so she's got the youth on her side. With her striking, she does brawl a lot, which does scare me in this matchup. I don't really love it, but it could actually work out. She's got power in the hands, and then she does have some submission victories as well. So I do think she's going to be durable enough to take this to a decision, and I just can't pick her in this matchup. I will have to end up going with Tainara Lisboa by decision, and it will be a somewhat fun scrap. Moving on up the card, we have Christian Rodriguez versus Cameron Simon. In this matchup, I'm going to be going with Cameron Simon by decision. I think it's going to be a mainly striking fight, and I think he's the more technical striker. He's got some pretty decent kickboxing. They both have very good cardio. But the difference is Cameron Simon is very good everywhere. So is Christian Rodriguez, but I believe in Cameron Simon's wrestling a little bit more. If he wants to keep it on the feet, I believe he can. Now, I think Christian Rodriguez is the better grappler. He can control you pretty well. He's got very good submissions, and he's very slick. In the Raul Rosas fight, he lost the first round, but Raul Rosas Jr. is very live in the first round, especially with his first round of cardio. He's very dominant. And then it goes to the round 2 and 3. We see Raul Rosas Jr. completely gas. So take with that win what you want, where I think Raul Rosas Jr. will be pretty good in MMA, but at the moment when Christian Rodriguez fought him, he is a fetus. What was he, 17 years old? So I think it's a good win, but we were all overrating Raul Rosas Jr. a little bit too much. And while he looked good in round 1, he did gas, and Christian Rodriguez showed solid cardio. So overall, this is a good fight. I'm taking the underdog in Cameron Simon. He's shown to have pretty decent fight IQ. He's very persistent. He's got some knockout power, but he just seems like a high IQ fighter, and he will keep this fight on the feet, in my opinion. And not slowly, he will outpoint Christian Rodriguez by just a smidge by a second-round knockout. Originally, I picked Daniel Lacerda, but I just can't be confident in him. I think he was losing the first round. I know that he was being a little bit more patient, which is nice to see, but at the same time, if he is patient, he's going to be outpointed, and he's got to wait to find that finish. And I don't know, even if he is patient, if he has a third round of cardio. This guy has no cardio. He's one round or bust, and he's very wild. And he can get the finish in the first round. He can't get it in the second round. If he's patient, we don't know how he's going to turn out to look, but it looked like he didn't have enough volume to outpoint Edgar Chairez, and I think Edgar Chairez is going to force him to make a mistake, and he's going to get the KO in the second round after Daniel Lacerda has a little bit of a quicker start to this fight than the last one. Not that the last one is super slow pace. You could just tell he's being a little bit more patient. And then if you're not refreshed, if you want to be refreshed on what the first fight looked like, this was the very weird stoppage. But honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. When you look at it, Edgar Chairez had him in a choke. It was similar to a guillotine, but apparently, according to Dominic Cruz, it wasn't a real choke, so he couldn't have tapped to it. But the ref was checking his arm, and then it looked like it went limp, so he stopped it. But then he protested it immediately, so now they're making the rematch. Here, I like Edgar Chairez. I just think he seems tough. He made his debut against Tatsuro Taira, and he had some success on the feet. Now, I don't think Tatsuro has good striking at all, but I trust him to beat Daniel Lacerda. If he can survive a round, more than likely he will win this fight. And maybe Daniel Lacerda has very good cardio, but the reality of it is he's on a 4-fight losing streak, and he was losing the first round up until that weird stoppage, whatever you want to call it, from Chris Dione. I don't know. I could see both sides here because Daniel Lacerda is genuinely a very good fighter, the best 0-4 fighter there probably has ever been, from my knowledge. But I can't trust him here. Felt like Edgar Chairez was having some success. This was on Mexican Independence Day, the Alexa Grasso card, by the way. Moving on up the card, we have Michel Pereira versus Andre Petrosky. Andre Petrosky looked horrible in his last fight against Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert's a guy you should be running through. In my opinion, his striking looked horrible, and he gassed out later in that fight. Michel Pereira is a guy that hasn't had the greatest cardio either, but I think that it was largely due to the fact that he was cutting 45 pounds to get down to welterweight. This guy is a massive welterweight and a pretty big middleweight. He's got power in the hands. He's a very athletic fighter, and he has a pretty okay ground game. I think he can stuff the takedowns or at least get back up to his feet. And if it's on the feet, he is way better of a striker than Andre Petrosky. So I like him by KO in round 2. But to be fair, with this new division, his cardio could be much better, and he could be live in round 3. So I don't mind him by decision either, but I'm going to be taking him round 2 KO. Andre Petrosky is going to get fraud checked, and we're all going to see how bad his striking is. Moving on up the card, we have Jonathan Martinez versus Adrian Yanez. Jonathan Martinez is a pretty technical kickboxer. He's coming off his win to Said Nurmagomedov. I personally thought Said won the fight. I know some other people feel that way as well. That doesn't matter. The reality of it is he won the fight on the scores or on the scorecards. So, oh well, counts as a win. It was a pretty close fight, to be fair. Now, what he is he's a very technical kickboxer. He has some power in the hands, but I view him as more the guy who kind of avoids the power shots and then likes to turn up later. One of his more impressive wins is his win against Cub Swanson. He won by leg kicks, and he looked very good in that fight. He's got some very nice leg kicks, which makes me nervous about this matchup, but I'm still going to be picking Adrian Yanez. And a lot of people are saying, Rob Font, fraud check them, okay? Rob Font is a great striker. There are a lot of levels at bantamweight. This is, in my opinion, the most skilled division in the UFC. So I don't blame Adrian Yanez for losing to Rob Font. And he was winning up until he got KO'd. He got very reckless. I think he landed a couple shots. His dick got a little bit too hard, and he just went crazy. He was swinging wild, and Rob Font caught him. I will say, though, does he have any very massively impressive wins? No, the Tony Kelly fight, nothing. Davey Grant, it's a solid win, to be fair. But what I see is he is very technical boxing. He's very, very, very powerful, but he has very tight boxing. And I think if he get this in the pocket, he will chin Jonathan Martinez in round 1. I remember watching Jonathan Martinez against, I believe it's Vince Morales. I rewatched it, and I was thinking, Jonathan Martinez has this in the bag. He's a rangy striker. He manages range somewhat well, and then Vince Morales landed I believe it was a hook or something like that, and then boom, he's down, he's dropped. And it's like, oh, shit. Adrian Yanez catches you. And by the way, it was up against the cage. If Adrian Yanez can catch you at all, you're fucked. And I mean that with Jonathan Martinez. Look at his chin. It does not look like he has a good chin. I'm not eliminating that from him, though. He is an overall very technical kickboxer. He has very good leg kicks, and he has some power, but I think he's going to try to, stay at distance, stay at range with his kicks, and avoid Adrian Yanez. But eventually the time will come, towards the end of round 1, Adrian Yanez will stalk him down and land a nice boxing combo that is tight, and he'll find the first round knockout. I could see it being in the second round. If it makes it past like the early second round, I think Jonathan Martinez has it just because his leg kicks are very good. And with a guy like Adrian Yanez, who's very boxing heavy, he will have a lot of success there. Moving on up the card, we have Jennifer Maia versus Viviane Araújo. I'm going to be taking Jennifer Maia in this matchup. I think she looked very impressive in her last fight against Casey O'Neill. She has underrated grappling, but she just looked good in the striking against Casey O'Neill. She can stuff the takedowns of Viviane Araújo. I think she can pretty easily outstrike Viviane Araújo as well, and she just is the overall better fighter almost everywhere. Araújo's 36. She didn't look very good in her last loss to Amanda Ribas. This one I'm not super confident in, but overall for the price tag of minus 150, I don't mind it that much for Jennifer Maia. I think she's going to get it done by decision. She's been looking impressive lately. I'm going to keep riding on that streak. Moving on up the card, we have Edson Barboza versus Sadiq Yusuff. In this matchup, I like Sadiq Yusuff, and I'm going to be taking him by a later KO. My official prediction is a round 4 KO. He's the younger guy. He hasn't fought in almost a year, but he's coming off an impressive win against a bum, Don Shanis, and he subbed him in the first round. But before that, he was coming off the win against Alex Caceres. This wasn't a very impressive performance, I wouldn't say. However, he beat Alex Caceres, and I think Alex Caceres is being a little bit underrated. A lot of people are saying, well, he didn't look that good against Alex Caceres. Well, Alex Caceres looked pretty good against Giga Chikadze, and guess who Giga Chikadze KO'd. It was Edson Barboza. Now, this isn't my whole reasoning. It's not MMA math. I think Sadiq Yusuff has somewhat okay to defense. He is hittable, but I think he can survive the early onslaught from Edson Barboza. And I know Barboza has good cardio in the past, but when you look at the Bryce Mitchell fight, which fair enough, he was getting out grappled, and it was more of a grappling exchange, he was gassed by the time the third round started. And the second round, he wasn't in great shape either. In the Giga Chikadze fight, Giga Chikadze KO'd him, obviously. And the Billy Q fight, we didn't get to see what he would look like later. He's only been 5 rounds once in his career, and it was a loss. I can't think of it on the top of my head, but he's only been 5 rounds once in his career. I think he's got to get it early. And I believe Sadiq Yusuff, the younger guy, will be able to survive the early onslaught from Edson Barboza. I think Edson Barboza's got probably 2 to 3 solid rounds to beat him, and he could absolutely outpoint him. I just think Sadiq Yusuff's going to be live in the later rounds. I think he's going to lose the first couple of rounds. Edson Barboza is going to obviously use his great stand-up, and he's going to have a lot of success there. But Sadiq Yusuff is a tough guy. But Edson Barboza, we know who he is. I just can't pick a 37-year-old, and he was getting into a little bit of a war with Billy Quarantillo until he landed that knee, which was a great knee. Great job by him. But I wasn't loving the way that it was looking early. Now, he didn't look horrible. I just didn't love the way it looked early. Sadiq Yusuff can land these big shots. I wouldn't be surprised if he KOs him round 4, like I said. When it's a dead even fight, I don't know who to pick. I'm going to be going with the younger guy that I believe can make in these improvements to beat a guy like Edson Barboza. With that being said, that's going to conclude this video. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.